people but the broader working class as well. The high rate of youth unemployment, currently at 13.4% nationally, a largely casualised workforce, lack of knowledge about minimum working conditions and pay, as well as being largely ununionised, results in an easily exploitable workforce, not just to their own detriment but also the detriment of other workers. Many young people enter the workforce with no knowledge on appropriate or legal working conditions, which largely makes it difficult, if almost impossible, for young workers to speak up when issues arise in the workplace, or to even realise when things aren't operating as they should be. To start off with an example of my own personal experience working at McDonald's for 2.5 years as a casual and a full-time employee, both at sort of the entry-level crew member, as it was called, and crew trainer. There was a significant amount of verbal abuse, both from the store owners and the store manager, usually directed towards the shift managers, but occasionally directly to the crew members as well. There were reports of physical abuse happening at other stores owned by the same people. And something I did experience firsthand was being bullied about taking a workplace injury through the work cover process, to the point where I didn't go ahead with the process and was just given a few days sick leave to recover from a repetitive stress injury that I had from work. The ideal worker was someone aged 18 to 19 because they'd finished school and they weren't on the full adult wages. And I'm pretty sure it's still the case that full adult wage doesn't kick in until 20. And I believe there's currently a campaign at the moment to lower that to 18, so that once someone turns 18, they're on full wage. I don't know if it's different in New South Wales, but that's what's happening in Victoria at the moment. And there was a tendency to push older casuals out. So as soon as you were 20 and you were on wage, they wanted to get rid of you, so they would start cutting your hours so you'd quit because they don't want you anymore. And there was an expectation of volunteer unpaid work for McHappy Day, which is their big fundraising day that they have for their charity every year. So, you know, all those activities, not that I suppose a lot of people here would frequent McDonald's, but if you went in on McHappy Day, there'd be stuff like face painting and people dressed as clowns, and a lot of that is staff there that have been expected to come in and volunteer and they're not getting paid for that work. Another more recent example that's been going around Facebook was an article released on a gaming website about similar events happening at EB Games, which is a popular retail outlet for console and PC games and merchandise. Many young people are interested, you know, in the gaming culture and would consider a position at EB Games to be the dream job. Like, it's something that a lot of people would aspire to be, like working at EB Games. However, the article titled "Inside EB Games When the Dream Job Becomes a Nightmare" paints the picture of EB Games being anything but a dream job. Again, included verbal abuse, huge amounts of unpaid hours. So staff would come in, they were paid to work a 4-hour shift, they were there for 10 hours. Doing things like setting up displays, doing stock take. There was expectation to come in for midnight launches. So when a new game comes out, EB does this midnight launch thing, and most of the people in the store aren't paid to be there. And it was all part of this culture in EB Games that you were friends, like you wanted to be there because you wanted to hang out with your friends, and it wasn't treated as a job, it was a social thing. It was a way to exploit young people, basically. There were instances of racism, people of colour being targeted and, you know, called useless, really horrendous stuff. By the manager of EB Games in Wollongong, actually, so if you want to go in there and hassle them, you should do that. There's a huge push on KPIs, so key performance indicators, and it's just an extremely sales-driven environment. So in response to this article, EB has claimed that it follows all Fair Work rules and regulations, and states that all casuals are paid for the time that they work, including midnight launches. However, a manager at EB Games has come out and said that it's a very well thought through system, that she said whilst managers were never directly asked to ask their employees to come in and work for free, their budget for hours was deliberately set to be too low. So they couldn't actually cover the tasks or the jobs that needed to be done with that budget. So the only choice they had was to get their casuals to come in and work for free. And interestingly enough, one of the EB employees that contributed to that article and put their name on it has since been banned from all EB game stores. Yeah, so unfortunately this kind of practice is commonplace across the retail sector, where a lot of those employed a casual, so there's just a complete lack of job security, and they have little to no knowledge about their rights at work, and that's something that's made really clear in the instance of EB Games. Like, workers were told if they spoke up and said, I want to be paid for these hours, they'd say you're expendable. Like, do you know how many resumes are dropped in here on a daily basis? You don't like it? Fine, there's 20 people waiting to take your job. So again, that's just that unspoken pressure, or spoken pressure really, to do what you're told or someone else will. The other growing trend in terms of exploiting youth labour is the increase in unpaid internships or work experience that many university graduates take on, so they've got something attractive to put on their resume. These graduates don't work any less than the paid staff. In fact, many of them would work the equivalent of full-time or even longer to make a good impression, in the hopes that putting in that extra effort will guarantee them a job, which isn't necessarily the case. And I guess the extreme instance of that, which was covered in Green Left recently, was a young worker in the US working for Goldman & Sachs, and he worked, I think, something like 72 hours straight and dropped dead at his desk. And then Goldman & Sachs did this massive 3-year inquiry into how it happened, and denied all responsibility. And but yeah, so I guess that's the extreme end of where this goes. And another example is this ongoing trend in retail and hospitality for trial shifts as part of the recruitment process. So you're expected to come in and work a day or 3 to 5 hours or whatever, and again it's unpaid and you're not guaranteed any kind of job after that. In addition to this, the placement hours that go along with TAFE diplomas and university degrees, that is unpaid, something I've had first-hand experience with being a social work student. You're expected to do hundreds of hours of placement, full-time, 6 to 7 weeks, and it's a course requirement. So it makes it really hard for not so much younger students, but more mature age students that would possibly have kids. They've already got paid time employment. They're doing this course, because you teach this course. And often they have to sacrifice their paid work to be able to do this placement that they're not getting paid for. I think it's also worth noting how age and gender intersect in terms of exploitation in the workforce. And according to ABS stats, the gender pay gap increases dramatically for women aged between 24 and 45. So as soon as you turn 24, basically the pay discrepancy just shoots up. And presumably this is at a time when many women would decide to have children and care for families. Similarly, the percentage of women working less than full-time hours, say the part-time or casual, decreases until the age of 20. And then continues to increase from there, again because the expectation that women are starting families or taking the largest share of staying at home to care for children, as well as other domestic duties. Another issue affecting women in the workplace, particularly young women, is not just the hiring of their labour for a wage, but also, it's just an idea I'm trying to play with, but like also hiring their physical appearance, as well as their personality and their emotions. So like there's this big trend in retail that, you know, you're selling your personality, like that's how you get people to buy stuff. And you can tell like the best workers in retail all have this like cloned personality, and it's really bizarre. It's like Stepford Wives like programming. It's really weird. But yeah, so I mean, I've seen that particularly in retail and hospitality, but I imagine, you know, it would go across a number of different industries. And I couldn't help wondering if, you know, another factor that impacts on the increase in the gender pay gap